the heart of the ancient world where the Tigris River whispered secrets through palm groves and towering minarets pierced the sky, stood Baghdad, a city of dreams, woven from silken scholarship, where the air hummed with the murmur of 1,000 tongues debating the stars. But beneath this veil of splendor, shadows lengthened unnoticed, as distant thunder rolled from the steppes, heralding an unstoppable force that would shatter the cradle of civilization. No one in the bustling markets or serene libraries could fathom the horror approaching, for the collapse of empires rarely announces itself with fanfare. It creeps in silence, like the slow erosion of riverbanks under relentless currents. Imagine the streets alive with merchants haggling over spices from distant Indies, scholars poring over illuminated manuscripts in the House of Wisdom, while the Caliph's palace echoed with the soft strum of lutes and the scent of rosewater. Yet, in this golden haze, the first cracks were forming, invisible to all. But the keenest eyes, his internal rivalries festered and external threats gathered like storm clouds on the horizon. The Abbasid Caliphate, once a beacon of Islamic glory, had risen from the ashes of the Umayyads in 750, when revolutionaries clad in black banners swept across the lands, proclaiming justice for the Prophet's family. Under Al-Mansur, Baghdad was born in 762, a meticulously planned metropolis, its round walls enclosing a mosaic of cultures: Arabs, Persians, Turks, and more, fostering an era where knowledge flowed as freely as the river's waters. The city's canals mirrored the heavens at night, lit by oil lamps that guided nocturnal wanderers through alleys perfumed with jasmine and incense, where poets recited verses that captured the soul's deepest longings. The Golden Age blossomed under Harun al-Rashid, whose court shimmered with opulence, inspiring tales that would echo through centuries as the Arabian Nights. Baghdad's population swelled to over 1 million souls, a melting pot where Christians, Jews, and Muslims coexisted in relative harmony. Their daily routines intertwined in the grand bazaars, selling silks from China, ivory from Africa, and amber from the Baltic. The House of Wisdom stood as the intellectual epicenter, where translators rendered Greek philosophies and Indian mathematics into Arabic, sparking advancements in astronomy, medicine, and algebra that illuminated the world. Physicians like Arazi experimented in hospitals that offered care to all, regardless of faith, while engineers devised intricate water clocks and automata that delighted the elite. The air carried the aroma of sizzling kebabs from street vendors, mingled with the acrid smoke of forges crafting exquisite swords and jewelry. Yet, even in this zenith, subtle dissonances emerged: the caliphs' growing reliance on Turkic slave soldiers, the Mamelukes, who brought martial prowess but sowed seeds of division with their foreign loyalties. The bureaucracy expanded, viziers wielding power that sometimes eclipsed the caliphs, as tax collectors roamed provinces extracting revenues to fund lavish palaces and endless feasts. Life pulsed with vibrancy. Children played in shaded courtyards, women veiled in fine fabrics bartered in markets. A muezzin's calls to prayer unified the city 5 times a day, a rhythmic reminder of spiritual order amid worldly pursuits. But no one paused to question the fragility of this harmony, as the first whispers of unrest stirred in distant corners of the empire. As the 9th century unfolded, the Abbasid realm began to fracture under the weight of its own ambitions. The civil war between Al-Amin and Al-Min tore at the fabric of unity, with brothers vying for the throne in battles that left cities smoldering and loyalties shattered. Al-Min's victory in 813 brought intellectual fervor, but his enforcement of Mutazili doctrine through the Minna alienated the Ulama, those guardians of Sunni orthodoxy, who retreated into scholarly independence, quietly undermining caliphal authority. The move to Samarra in 836 under Al-Mutasim sought to isolate the turbulent Turkic guards, but instead ignited the anarchy at Samarra, a decade of chaos. From 861 to 870, where caliphs were puppets in the hands of military cliques, assassinated or deposed amid palace intrigues that echoed through empty halls, stained with blood. Daily life in Baghdad shifted. The once thriving market saw fewer caravans as rebellions like the Zanj uprising of enslaved Africans ravaged the south, disrupting agriculture and trade routes. The scent of decay mingled with the usual spices-flooded fields turned fertile lands into swamps, while bandits prowled the highways, their shadows lengthening as central control waned. Provinces slipped away. The Tahirids in Khorasan, the Safarids in each establishing semi-autonomous rule, siphoning taxes that once filled Baghdad's coffers. In the city, scholars continued their work, but the air grew heavy with uncertainty, as whispers of distant uprisings reached the coffee houses where men debated philosophy over steaming cups. Unaware that these fissures were widening into chasms, by the 10th century, the invisible warning signs multiplied as the Bid dynasty, Shia Iranians, marched into Baghdad in 945, reducing the Sunni caliphs to ceremonial figures while they wielded true power. The streets, once patrolled by loyal troops, now hosted foreign guards whose alien tongues and customs bred resentment among the populace. Economic strains deepened. The Itti system granted lands to military elites, eroding the caliphate's fiscal base, while piracy disrupted maritime trade, leaving warehouses empty and artisans idle. The aroma of baking bread grew scarce in poorer quarters, where hunger gnawed at families huddled in crumbling mud brick homes. Sectarian tensions simmered. Sunnis and Shia clashed in alleyways, their shouts piercing the night like daggers, foreshadowing greater divisions. Yet, a brief revival flickered under caliphs like al-Muqtafi and al-Nasr, who rebuilt armies and extended influence, fortifying Baghdad's walls against encroaching threats. The Mustansiriya Madrasa rose in 1234, a bastion of learning uniting Sunni schools, where students debated jurisprudence amid the scent of fresh ink and aged parchment. Daily routines persisted. Merchants navigated the Tigris on red boats laden with goods, while poets and salons evoked nostalgic glories. But the silence between prayers grew ominous, as reports of nomadic incursions filtered in, and floods ravaged the city, washing away homes and hope, leaving behind a muddy residue of despair that no one fully acknowledged. The Seljuk Turks' arrival in 1055 layered another veil of instability, as sultans like Toghrul Beg assumed protectorate over the caliph, their horsemen thundering through gates that once symbolized unassailable might. Baghdad's society adapted. Intermarriages, blending cultures, but underlying frictions persisted. The caliph's religious prestige clashed with the sultan's military dominance, creating a dual power structure ripe for conflict. In the markets, the clink of coins diminished as trade routes shifted, bypassed by safer paths, and the once vibrant Silk Road carried fewer whispers of exotic wonders. The air thickened with dust from neglected canals, where water levels dropped, parching gardens that had bloomed eternally. Early in the 13th century, the Khwarezmian Empire's collapse under Genghis Khan's onslaught in 1220 sent shockwaves. Refugees flooding Baghdad with tales of horror cities raised, populations slaughtered that chilled the blood of listeners in shadowed mosques. Yet, the caliphate endured minor Mongol probes in the 1230s, repelling raids near Erbil and even a force in 1245, fostering a false sense of security. The scent of incense in shrines masked the growing fear, as assassins from the Nizarius Malus struck at Mongol commanders, their daggers a fleeting defiance against the encroaching storm. No one connected these dots, the isolated incidents blending into the tapestry of routine strife. As the city slumbered in denial, rising tension gripped Baghdad as the mid-13th century advanced, with Caliph al-Mustasim ascending in 1242 amid a caliphate reduced to Iraq's heartland, its armies a shadow of former glory. Sectarian violence erupted anew after devastating floods in 1256, Sunnis and Shia turning streets into battlegrounds, the acrid smell of smoke from torched homes lingering in the humid air. The vizier, Ibn al-Alkamai, a Shia, navigated court intrigues, accused later of treachery, while the caliph indulged in poetry and music, his palace echoing with laughter that drowned out warnings. Mongol expansions under Mangi Khan accelerated. Hulagu, dispatched in 1253 with a vast host, dismantled the assassin strongholds by 1256, their fortresses crumbling like sand under siege. Engines barrage. Diplomatic envoys arrived, demanding submission, the dismantling of fortifications, tribute, and troops for Mongol campaigns, but al-Mustasim rebuffed them with arrogance, his responses laced with mockery that echoed through empty halls. The wind carried rumors of approaching armies, horsemen scouting the horizons, their hoofbeats a distant drumroll of doom. In Baghdad, daily life faltered. Markets hushed earlier. Guards patrolled nervously, and the Tigris seemed to flow slower, as if burdened by impending fate. But the caliph clung to illusions of divine protection, ignoring pleas to fortify our ally. His decisions sealing the city's isolation. Key pressures mounted as Hulag's demands intensified in 1257. His letters thundering threats of annihilation if Baghdad did not yield. The caliph's court, divided by factionalism, debated in whispers. Daudar urged defiance, while others sensed the news tightening. Mistakes compounded. Al-Mustasim's refusal to send reinforcements against the assassins alienated Hulagu, who interpreted it as hostility. The city's defenses, weakened by floods, stood brittle, walls cracked, and moats silted, guarded by an untrained garrison of perhaps 50,000, many deserting as fear spread like contagion. Social fabric strained. Merchants hoarded goods, prices soared, and the poor scavenged in refuse heaps. Hollow eyes, reflecting growing panic. The air grew heavy with tension. Silent pauses in conversations betraying unspoken dread. Envoys returned, humiliated. Mobs jeering them in streets, alive with rumors of invincible hordes. Al-Mustasim's overconfidence, rooted in centuries of prestige, blinded him to reality. He boasted of summoning Muslim armies. Yet neighbors like the Ayyubids and Mamluks remained aloof, their own realms threatened. The moment approached quietly, scouts reporting Mongol columns advancing, their campfires dotting the night sky like ominous stars, as Baghdad's inhabitants slept uneasily, unaware that the threshold of collapse had been crossed. The system began to fail in late 1257, as Hulag's army, swollen with Georgian, Armenian, and Seljuk auxiliaries, crossed the Tigris. Their disciplined ranks, contrasting Baghdad's disorganized defenses. On January 16, 1258, the Daudar led a sortie against Bidu's forces. But treachery or miscalculation led to disaster. The Mongols breached the Dujiel Canal, flooding the Abbasid camp, drowning soldiers in muddy torrents amid screams that pierced the dawn. Survivors fled back to the city, their tales amplifying terror as the noose encircled Baghdad by January's end. Hulag's engineers erected palisades and moats, siege towers looming like giants, while naphtha hurlers prepared fiery barrages. Inside, the caliph's pleas for aid went unanswered, his isolation complete. The air filled with the distant thud of catapults' testing range, stones whistling overhead, shattering rooftops and resolve. Daily routines shattered. Families barricaded homes, the muezzin's call drowned by war drums, and the scent of fierce sweat and smoke pervaded every corner. No one could ignore the signs now, the quiet build-up erupting into inevitable chaos. As the once mighty caliphate teetered on the brink, its foundations crumbling under the weight of hubris and neglect. Human consequences unfolded with brutal inevitability. As the siege tightened in February 1258, Mongol forces breaching the walls on the 10th after relentless bombardment that turned fortifications to rubble. The city, starved and besieged, surrendered conditionally. But Hulag's wrath knew no bound. Soldiers poured through gates, their blades gleaming in the winter sun, unleashing a slaughter that claimed hundreds of thousands. Streets ran red with blood, the Tigris choked with bodies and ink from destroyed libraries, as scholars and civilians alike met indiscriminate death. Women and children huddled in mosques, their cries echoing amid the crackle of flames consuming palaces and homes. The house of wisdom vanished in fire, centuries of knowledge reduced to ash, drifting on the wind like forgotten dreams. Social breakdown was absolute. Neighbors turned on each other in desperation, looting amid the ruins, while disease festered in the unburied dead, the stench overwhelming the survivors' senses. Al-Mustasim, captured and forced to reveal treasures, met a grim and trampled by horses or starved, his demise symbolizing the caliphate's humiliation. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the wails of the bereaved, as Baghdad's vibrant soul was extinguished in a fortnight of horror. The long-term historical impact rippled across the Islamic world, marking the end of the Abbasid Caliphate's effective rule and the Islamic Golden Age's zenith. Baghdad, once the world's largest city, lay in ruins, its population decimated, canals clogged with debris, and economies shattered, trade routes diverted, agriculture ruined by salted fields and Mongol reprisals. The destruction of libraries and institutions scattered scholars, halting intellectual progress, works of Aristotle, Galen, and countless others lost forever. Their absence a void in human knowledge. Power shifted. The Mongols established the Ilkhanate, eventually converting to Islam, but the caliphate's prestige waned, a shadow line persisting in Cairo under Mamluk protection until 1517. Sectarian divides deepened, Shia communities gaining from perceived Sunni failures, while the Ottoman rise later filled the vacuum. Civilization reshaped Europe, benefited indirectly from fleeing scholars, sparking Renaissance seeds, but the Middle East entered centuries of fragmentation, invasions, and recovery. The air over Baghdad grew still. The rivers flow a mournful dirge for lost glories. As empires rose and fell in the wake of this rupture, in the aftermath, the echoes of Baghdad's fall lingered like ghosts in the desert winds, a testament to how prosperity can blind societies to their vulnerabilities. The city's rebirth would come slowly, under new rulers, but the scars remained etched in stone and memory, reminding future generations of the delicate balance between power and peril. The Tigris continued to meander, carrying away the remnants of a shattered era, while distant horizons promised new beginnings amid the ruins. Yet, the silence of those final days before the storm serves as a haunting whisper. Collapses begin not with thunder, but with the quiet dismissal of gathering shadows. The narrative of Baghdad's prelude to destruction unfolds layers of human ambition and frailty, where the splendor of minarets and manuscripts masked the rot within. As the Mongol hordes approached, the city's inhabitants clung to routines that had defined centuries, unaware that each passing day tightened the invisible threads of fate. The markets, once teeming with life, began to empty subtly, vendors glancing nervously at the gates, their voices hushed in speculation. The caliph's indifference, born of inherited prestige, amplified the creeping dread as envoys' warnings dissolved into the humid air like morning mist. Deeper into the decline, environmental harbingers compounded political wars or recurrent floods. From the Tigris not only destroyed homes, but eroded the very soil of stability, leaving behind fetid pools that bred disease and discontent. The scent of mold permeated dwellings, a constant reminder of nature's indifference to human grandeur. Social hierarchies strained. The elite retreated to fortified enclaves, while the common folk bore the brunt, their murmurs of unrest growing into a low hum that vibrated through the city's veins. As tensions escalated, key figures like the vizier navigated treacherous waters, their allegiances questioned and shadowed councils. The decision to mock Hulag's ultimatums resonated through the palace like a fatal echo, sealing alliances against Baghdad and isolating it further. The night air carried the distant neighs of horses, a prelude to the cacophony that would soon engulf everything. The initial failures manifested in small betrayals, desertions from the ranks. Supplies hoarded by the fearful eroding, morale like sand worn by wind. The moment of systemic breakdown arrived, with the flooded water surging as if the river itself conspired against the defenders, drowning hopes in cold, relentless waves. Consequences cascaded upon the populace, families torn asunder, scholars witnessing the pyres of their life's work, the collective scream of a city silenced under the boot of conquest. The breakdown stripped away illusions, revealing the raw humanity beneath fear, survival, loss. Impacts extended beyond borders, reshaping trade, faith, and knowledge flows. The void left by Baghdad's fall a chasm that echoed through history's corridors. The reflective hush that followed invited contemplation on empire's ephemeral nature, a haunting coda to a symphony of collapse. Yet, in the ruins, seeds of resilience stirred, whispers of rebuilding amid the debris, a cycle as eternal as the river's course. The story of Baghdad before the invasion endures as a mirror to our own times, where warnings whisper unheeded in the wind.